Business is a series of plateaus, and at every plateau, you need a breakthrough. We were doing a couple of $100,000 plus a month. We don't have enough money to pay the presenters or pay the team. And I knew right there and then, unless something radically changed, we weren't going to have a business any longer. So this time, instead of adding, all a plateau is, it's a signal. Right now, if you're in a plateau within your own business, it's the business giving you feedback that something needs to shift and something needs to change. It can be one of three things. The first is that there is a mindset that needs to shift. There is a belief that is holding you back, that is like a shackle around the ankle that needs to be removed. The second is, and then the third part is going to be your Welcome to a solo episode of Profit Made Simple. And what I'm going to be sharing with you today is what I presented at our latest client event. And that is the Growth Plateaus framework and how to build a business that grows with you. You see, business is a series of plateaus. And at every plateau, you need a breakthrough. And I'm going to be talking about what exactly needs to happen so you can get to that next stage. But I'm going to start with a story. And it's a story about the education business that I used to own. Now, from the outside looking in, this education business was extremely successful. We had a remarkable reputation within the industry itself. We had partnerships with some of the biggest brands. We had 30 presenters delivering in 16 countries, and we were being asked to speak on some of the biggest stages in the world. But behind closed doors, it was looking very different. The cracks were starting to appear, and the business that was once simple had become chaotic. We were running up to 200 workshops a year, and there were workshops where participants weren't notified, presenters didn't know whether they were coming or going, and the leaders within the business, i.e. me, were completely reactive. I used to refer to myself as a firefighter, constantly putting out the challenges and the problems. But really where this came to a head for me was sitting down in our finance meeting. Every single week, I'd sit down with my accounts manager. And this particular week, she's like, Dan, we don't have enough money to pay the presenters or pay the team. And at this point, we were doing a couple of $100,000 plus a month. And I sat there just confused. How did we get to this point? We were obviously generating great revenue, had a remarkable reputation, yet weren't managing cash flow, and it just felt so stressful. And I knew right there and then, unless something radically changed, we weren't going to have a business any longer. I was resenting the business. And so that's why I knew we had to do something very different. Now, up until that point, that very different was do more. Let's build another course. Let's add another region. Let's create another offer. And that had worked. That had gotten us to this point. But we knew we needed a different strategy, a different approach. And so this time, instead of adding, we removed less courses, less regions, a consolidation of the offers we had in place. We looked at our operational framework, developed better SOPs, better delineation between the leaders of the business, improved communication, better meeting structures. And in the midst of COVID of all times and stages, something remarkable happened. We hit record-breaking month after record-breaking month. Now, what this experience taught me is that growth is never linear and that you actually need a very different strategy and a different approach to overcome plateaus within the different stages of the business journey. You see, all a plateau is, it's a signal. Right now, if you're in a plateau within your own business, it's the business giving you feedback that something needs to shift and something needs to change. Now, what is that something? It can be one of three things. And sometimes it's a combination of those. So the first is that there is a mindset that needs to shift. There is a belief that is holding you back, that is like a shackle around the ankle that needs to be removed. It's like the elephant and the rope. And so you may have beliefs around money, self-worth, what you can charge, building a team, control, that right now are holding you and your business back. And they need to be replaced by a new, empowering, up-level belief. So that's the first part. The second is the skill set. The adage of what got you here won't get you there is very true. In the earlier stages of business, you need to develop the skills of sales and marketing. But as you develop into the next stages of business, it's going to be about management, financial literacy, communication, how to have radical candor, leadership. And then the third part is going to be your toolkit. These are the frames, the systems, the technology that you will actually incorporate into the business itself. So we have four distinct plateaus. We have survival, we have capacity, we have complexity, and we have founder. So let's start at our survival phase. Now, we have all been through the survival phase, and maybe some of us are in the midst of going through it right now. And this is one of the most exhausting phases of the business itself because it just takes so much energy and effort and focus to create any semblance of momentum. You're working ridiculous hours, harder than you've ever worked in your life. And you had this picture of what it would look like to be a business owner. And right now, your life looks very different. Early mornings, late nights, and just a roller coaster of emotions. Every time you add a new client, that belief goes up and you're like, yes, this is what it's all about. Only it comes undone in those phases where it's really difficult to add clientele. You get cancellations, and then the hope, the luster, the excitement of that new business is starting to be replaced with some anxiety, some overwhelm, and self-doubt. So how do you break through this first phase? Well, here's the hint. It's not about working harder whatsoever, but there are two key levers that we need to pull. So the first is our mindset. So a lot of us get into this industry, this incredible industry, because we want to serve people. We want to help people have the best, healthiest life possible, to realize their potential. And often it's that very mindset that keeps us stuck. We call this the martyr mindset. And it's where you say, look, I don't need to make huge amounts of money because I'm helping people. Well, when did we decide that helping people and making money were mutually exclusive? In fact, you can do both very well, because when you are successful and you're pricing accordingly, you then have more resources to reinvest back into the business itself and to serve your clients even better. Because if you're just giving away your product, your expertise, your service for next to nothing, this will inevitably lead to burnout. When you're exhausted, when you're burnt out, how many lives are you transforming then? So this is a false belief that we need to let go of. The second mindset that needs to shift is our scarcity mindset around pricing. Right now, you might be undercharging, not enforcing terms, because you don't quite believe in yourself or the product itself. And you know what? Prospects will feel that. If you don't believe in your product, how can you expect them to do so? So these two beliefs need to be put to bed. Now, when it comes to skill set, You've probably opened up your new fitness business full of enthusiasm because you love the coaching side. You're a great technician, but that's not going to help you get past this plateau, this survival stage. What you need to become is you need to become a great marketer and a great salesperson. You need to learn how to craft and implement fantastic, compelling offers into your business where people will feel stupid saying no. A lot of these podcast episodes are around developing your marketing and sales skills. We talk about the 6 lead flows. We talk about the 3C sales systems. And you need to become an expert in both of these. When you do so, then you start to have a business that reflects more of the dream that you had. You're now starting to add clients. You can see that the business is actually working. You're making some money, and heaven forbid, you're starting to pay yourself. You're paying your taxes on time. And the most important thing is you start to believe that you can create the business of your dreams. Now, I remember this phase like it was yesterday, but it was 18 years ago for me. I opened my first personal training studio, and I have never worked as hard in my life. I was waking up really early, staying really late, working weekends, public holidays, and never taking any holidays whatsoever. I was scarce around money, and I didn't have much belief, and so I was charging very little. I had payment terms, but I was rarely enforcing them. I was letting people essentially do whatever and whenever they wanted. They would cancel last minute, they'd pay me cash, they'd pay me by direct deposit, whatever they wanted to do. And the reality hit that I had came when I calculated my hourly rate. At that point in time, it was $3 an hour. And I knew that this was unsustainable, that something dramatic needed to shift and change. And for me at that point in time, it was hiring my first ever business coach. Now we're going back 18 years. As a business, top line revenue, we were making about $4,000, and this business coach was charging me $2,000. So it was a significant risk on my behalf. But the bigger risk was standing still. So we've burst through this first phase, and now we hit plateau number 2, which is the capacity stage. Things are looking a little different at this point in time. You're adding some members, you're building your revenue, you're paying yourself some money. But the challenge is this. You're wearing every single hat in the business. You are the marketer, the salesperson, the bookkeeper, the head coach. You are doing absolutely everything. And it's exhausting. If anything breaks, it comes to you. If a decision needs to be made, it comes to you. And you are the solution to every single challenge and problem within the business itself. Now, the problem here is that you may have some team members at this point in time. Yet those team members still run everything by you. And you get frustrated because they can't read your mind. Well, they're not the problem. The problem is you and your inability to create systems that run the business itself. So how do we break through this plateau? Well, again, it's going to be mindset, but then it's also going to be our toolkit. So let's talk about our mindset. At this point in time, you need to relinquish control. So many fitness business owners are stuck because of their need for control. They are unwilling to relinquish or delegate tasks, projects, or responsibility to their team members. And they'll tell themselves things like, well, if it's meant to be done right, then it's got to be done by me. You know, this was very much my dad's belief. He had small businesses when I was growing up. And he said, son, if you want to do anything right, you've got to do it yourself. And that's why his businesses didn't grow to a huge level. It's why he worked ridiculous hours doing a lot of the menial tasks. So you've got to kill that belief for control. You also need to kill the belief that someone has to do something exactly the same as you and exactly the same standard. Because that may never happen and you're setting yourself up for failure. So the Dan Martell quote is very true. 80% done, 100% by someone else is freaking awesome. So if they can take over 100% of that project, that task, that responsibility, and it's 80% to the standard of you, that's freaking awesome. So that's the mindsets that need to be broken. Now, when it comes to the toolkit, you're going to have to learn how to create SOPs. So for anything that is repeatable or complex, you just want to create a very basic how-to. You can do this via Loom. You can take the Loom transcript, you can put it in ChatGPT, and it can create a wonderful SOP for you. So then you've got a video and a written form for it. You're going to have to learn how to create roles and responsibilities for every position. You're going to have to start tracking metrics, and every position should have a KPI. You're going to have some basic accountability chart on who is responsible for what within the business itself. And the last thing that you may need to consider is upgrading your technology stack. Now, this is a phase that I thought would take me 1 year to get through. I thought I would burst through this plateau in 1 year, and it took me 5. And I remember the exact moment I knew that I had burst through this plateau. I flew to Granada in Spain for my best friend's wedding. And there I am sitting outside having a cheeky paella and beer. And I didn't have one message from my team, one email, one problem to solve. I didn't step foot in that studio for 6 weeks. And yet it operated absolutely seamlessly without me. Now, that didn't happen overnight. As I said, it took 5 years. I had to develop and refine my systems. I had to upgrade my technology stack. At that point in time, I put mind and body into my studio. I hired a really experienced, skilled administrator to do the back office work because that's the stuff that I was weak at. I started to develop my team and give them more responsibility. I had regular meetings every single week without fail. We had a team meeting. I did regular professional development. And I got back something that I'd been craving for 5 years: time and freedom. I now had space to breathe. Heaven forbid I can enjoy some holidays, hobbies, doing the things that I want to do, and the business grows without me. That's when you know you have burst through the capacity plateau. We now hit plateau number 3, the complexity stage. At this point in time, you have a business, not a job. Not everything needs to be run by you. And from the outside looking in, things look fantastic. Revenue keeps going up. The team is building. You've got more freedom to do the things that you want to do and love doing. Only some cracks are starting to appear. What was once simple has now become complex. You don't just have 1 or 2 core services now. Now you've got 4, 5, 6, 7. You've got lots of different offers. You've got lots of classes on the timetable. You have lots of pricing and packaging options. And your team is starting to feel a little fragmented, a little disjointed, and they're not sure where the business is heading. This weighs on you. So whilst you've got physical time, you don't have the mental capacity that you desire. So the real problem here is that the growth has simply outpaced the structures and the systems that you have in place. The breakthrough is again twofold. The first is your toolkit. So what needs to shift and change? Number 1, we need to actually simplify the business itself. We need to hack away at the unessential. So often I speak to business owners that are stubborn and committed to doing things a certain way because it's the way that they have always done it. Yet it is not the most effective or efficient. And so you really need to audit everything within your business. Do I need every single one of these classes on my timetable? Do I need every single one of these pricing and packaging options? I just spoke to a prospect today. Incredible lady, built a phenomenal business, but I jumped on her website, and when I saw all the pricing and packaging options, I was overwhelmed. There was so much there, so it needed simplification. Your systems, the way that you communicate, need to be simplified. The second thing that we want to do, we want to have a clearer operational structure. Again, I was speaking to some clients today. They've built a phenomenal business and have grown exponentially with us. But with that growth has come more complexity, has become more departments, more team members. And the challenge is no one knows who they should be speaking to about certain things. Who they are accountable to has become grey. Who is responsible for what amongst the different leaders in the business, again, has become grey. So from a toolkit perspective, we need to hack away the unessential. We need to get rid of offers, team members even, pricing and packages, and potentially classes and services that are no longer moving the business forward. We then need to improve the operational structure and communication itself. Now, from a skill set perspective, you also must evolve. You need to become an excellent decision maker. This has been a significant challenge for me personally. I traditionally will labor on hard decisions. I will ruminate on those decisions that need to be made. And what I'm doing in those moments is I'm putting a handbrake on the business. I'm creating uncertainty. And if you're not making a decision, then a decision is being made for you. So you need to develop the skill of decisiveness and astute decision-making done quickly. The second skill you need to develop is prioritization. At this stage of business, you're going to have so many wonderful opportunities that are going to be presented to you. There are going to be sporting teams that want to partner with you, influencers, people are going to want to do a location with you. You're going to have opportunities to speak. And you have to determine what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. Now, on this podcast, Andrew Simmons quoted Warren Buffett about his power to say no. You need to focus on the main thing. You need to keep the main thing and not be distracted from, even if they're good opportunities that steer you off course. We have to say no to the idea fairy and the shiny objects. And then we need to develop as leaders. A lot of this podcast is about how do you become the operator, the CEO, the best potential leader you can be. Because at this point in time, you need to create other great leaders. You need to model leadership. You need to have emotional resilience. You need to be a great communicator. Everyone must know the vision of the business and where it's going. And you need to take complete and utter ownership. Now, when you break through this plateau, you feel lighter, you feel freer, you finally feel in control again, and you get back something that you've been craving for so long. That is mental capacity and clarity. Now, the story that I shared at the beginning of today's podcast was around my education business, and we had fallen into this plateau because of the complexity itself. There was just so many moving parts. Now, I've experienced that as a business owner once. You would think that I would have the benefit of experience and that I would be able to see it and combat it very quickly the next time around. But this is exactly where I found myself with Fitness Profit last year. When I looked at the business, we had 2 programs, which didn't make much sense. Why did we have 2 programs when we could solve all the problems with one? We had 2 Facebook groups, 2 portals, we had live calls for 2 different programs, and it just meant a duplication of effort. It also put a lot of pressure on my coaches. I was asking them to do so much. And as a result, again, communication became a little ambiguous, it became a little unclear, and little balls started to be dropped. So towards the end of last year, I did something very courageous and brave. I shut down a coaching program that was generating a bunch of money because I wanted to simplify the business model. I wanted to make life easier. We went down to one portal, one group of calls, one coaching program. I brought in some additional support. I brought in a customer experience manager so I could make the roles even simpler for my coaches so they could have a more profound and powerful impact. And the impact that it has had, not only on the business, but on me, has been profound. I feel lighter, and I now have a business that can scale to that next level. And we now hit our final plateau. And this is what I call the founder stage. And everything is great. It doesn't just look great. Everything is great around the business at this point in time. Fantastic top line revenue, excellent profit, fantastic team, a wonderful reputation, an impact in the community that is getting clients wonderful, life-changing results. Yet you know that something is still not entirely right. And that something that's not entirely right is that everything big is on you. The vision, the standards, the innovation, that's on you as a leader. So whilst the business is no longer chaotic, it is constrained. So the real problem here is that you have a wonderful team, but they're a team of implementers. They're not a team of leaders. They're not people that see a problem and create the solutions without your input. They're not a team that actually helps raise the standard collectively. They're not a team that will actually be proactive, autonomous, and resolve what needs to be done to move the business to the next level. And so the resolution at this stage is threefold. It is mindset, it is skill set, and it is toolkit. So from a mindset perspective, you need to let go of the belief that I need to run this business. And instead, you need to believe and uphold, I need to develop leaders that will run this business without me. Now, from a skill set perspective, it is your ability to create other leaders. So you can be a wonderful leader, but the true hallmark of a great leader is how they are fostering and developing other leaders within their business. And to do this, you need to be wonderful at coaching and mentoring your team. You need to be really good at empowering them, giving them autonomy. You need to make sure that your decision-making is at the absolute highest level and highest level only. And the structure of the business itself, this is where it really needs to be dialed in. You've got an accountability chart that everybody knows who is accountable to whom, what are the key responsibilities of every position. Every position has a metric and a project. You have a leadership rhythm and a leadership meeting that you run every single week. You have performance reviews, and yet your other leaders will do the performance reviews on your behalf for their people that they're responsible for. And this is how you develop leaders at this higher level. Now, from a toolkit perspective, it's everything that I just said. It's been really good on your actual business plans, your accountability charts, your vision, your vivid vision, your KPIs, the projects, the key markers in the business itself, and making sure all of those frameworks are well communicated and accessible. And when you realize this stage, then you have true freedom. You have the opportunity to do absolutely anything and everything you want, whether it's within the business or outside of the business itself. It may be that you want to continually innovate within the business, or you can choose a passion project to focus on outside of the business. Now, when I look at my business career, this is where I'm at right now. I haven't moved through the founder stage, absolutely not. Fitness profit is still dependent on Dan, is still constrained by Dan when it comes to the big picture, the vision, the standards, the innovation. But I also am very confident that I'm going to navigate through this plateau in the very near future. Why? Because I've recruited, developed wonderful leaders on my team. I'm giving them more responsibility. I'm empowering them more. I'm giving ownership, not just responsibility. I'm making sure that they have autonomy and make big decisions. And I'm getting out of their way, which is something which is very, very challenging within this phase itself. In fact, I would say that's one of the biggest challenges of this phase is actually removing yourself from it. But it's only when you do so that you will have that breakthrough. So there we have our plateaus framework. And that's how you build a business through you. You've got your survival stage, your capacity stage, your complexity stage, and your founder stage. At each one of those stages, something needs to shift and evolve. And in every stage, it's a combination of at least two of the following: mindset, skill set, and toolkit. But I've now given you the framework, the blueprint, because right now you're either at one of these plateaus or you're approaching it very, very soon. So my challenge to you is this: identify where you sit within the model itself. Which plateau are you at right now? And more importantly, what needs to shift? What must shift so you can burst through that and get to that next stage? Because your business is not stuck. It's just waiting for the next version of you. Thank you so much for listening, watching to today's episode. If you found it valuable, you know what to do. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Let's get this in more people's hands because I want to see more business owners win and succeed and burst through those plateaus. Thank you very much.